Good. I'm actually waiting for Dora to go ahead, but I assume that the short film is now over and you are all ready for our afternoon session. It's not the preferred timing after the lunch, but now we had a vegetarian lunch. So usually it's not that heavy than if you eat meat. So I hope you are all refreshed and that you can follow this session. It is an important one because we will talk about buildings. So that is like one piece in the big puzzle of energy savings. And I do have a number of questions. Some of them are a bit perhaps difficult to answer. But on the other hand, I have also told the panelists, don't worry, it's not an exam. This here is really to work together, and that's also very much the spirit of the Kosovo Sustainable Development Week. As most of you know, it's a bit of a unique format where really civil society, then the government, the EU, the GIZ, German embassy, we all work together. So we have a common goal, and this is, again, no exam question, so don't worry too much. My name is Dr. Annette Fadlihic. I'm the Chief Political Advisor, Executive Coordinator with the European Union. And what I could do, but I'm a little bit hesitant to do it, is I could take now the 1.5 hours and read now through a document, which I actually have here, what the EU is funding. Because we are heavily involved in that sector. Actually, most of our funding is in these days going into environment/energy. I'm also, and I shouldn't hide that, I'm seconded by Germany to the European Union. And again, my own country and my taxes also go again in that sector. And my home country, Germany, is again very heavily involved in that. But the arm is here, the GIZ, so these are the colleagues who are representing then Germany. So I'm representing the EU, but not talking too much about the EU. I would like to introduce you to the panelists. And before I start, I also wanted to tell you that you have to bear a little bit with me this afternoon. And I do have a slight problem, I have to say, and this is that this screen is really irritating my eyes. So if I'm not looking in your face when you talk, then please don't take it as that I'm unpolite. But I was already sitting here and almost in tears. So I think also we as organizers, and again the EU is part of it, we might have to think about this. It takes energy, and it does really, I mean, at least for me, maybe I'm super sensitive, but it irritates my eyes. So sorry about that, and again, I apologize for this. But let me now introduce you to the panelists, and I do hope that my pronunciation is okay. If not, then you correct me. So next to me, this is Mr. Servet Spahiou. He's the director of the Department of Special Planning, Constructions and Housing at the Ministry of Environment, Spatial Planning and Infrastructure. Unfortunately, we missed your minister this morning. Just a small hint again, but we are very happy that you are here. Next to Mr. Spahiou, it's Redon Begoli. He's an energy specialist at the World Bank. Then the lady next to him with the fantastic green shoes. I love them. Good. We should all wear green shoes the next time for the Kosovo Sustainable Development Week. So this is Sarah Olmstedt, and she's from the MCC, and she's the country director of Kosovo. And many of you have read in the news a couple of days ago. You made quite headlines, and you will tell us more about that. in a minute. Then we have Bekim Muaremi, sorry, and he's the principal banker at the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development. So another man with money, right? Okay. And afterwards we have Besiana Chorai, now I'm really struggling, okay? Berisha, and she is from the Department of Renewables in the Ministry of Economy. And again, I'm sorry, but to say we missed your minister. So please convey this message. And finally, we do have a Greek German, no, a Greek who has attended German school, you told me, with a German name, at least the first name. So this is Stefan Palantstas, that's the Greek part of it, which I'm struggling. He's a building certifier at the Hellenistic Passive House Institute. Okay, so a very warm welcome to all of you. And maybe to get us a little bit warmed up, I would like to take a first round. And you tell me all very quickly, so what comes in your mind, what are we going to do with Pristina, with all the houses we're seeing, so how to turn that into buildings which are really efficient and using renewables. So very quickly, one by one, just that we warm up a little bit. We start with you, and then you hand over to your neighbor. Thank you.
Faleminderit. Pyetje relativisht shumë e shtirë. Me dho përgjigje. Unë po flas për perspektivës sektorit ndërtimit, planifikimit edhe të banimit. Në aspektin e eficiencës energjisë. Po, okay. Se sa biti pa kjo shumë zhurë, më thashtë e larë. Zonë. Sa i përket perspektivës nuk është bashkë lehtë në aspektin e objekteve familjare, shtëpive familjare. Gjitha rregullat nuk janë qitë në vend sa i përket eficiencës energjisë, respektivisht performancë energjetike në ndërtesa, por ka iniciativa në vitet e fundit, donacione ndryshme, programe ndryshme, kemi edhe mësisi këtu, fondi për eficiencë energjisë është funksional dhe pritet përveç objekteve shumë banesore të hy, është të tentu me hy në sektor rezidencial për me dha grande dhe me përkra eficiencën e energjisë në objekte individuale, ndërsa sa i përket eficiencës energjisë edhe humbjet të energjisë në objekte, edhe tani ka eficiencë energjisë, po sa është ajo me kërkesat minimale edhe me kërkesat e domosdoshme që do të mi pas të rregulluar me ligj nuk është duke u zbatuar. Tham që ka eficiencë energjisë, po jo në atë nivelin e kënaqshëm. Na si vjet si ministri planifikojmë fund vitit, besoj nëntor eventualisht dhjetor me fillu certifikimin e parë në Kosovë, me çuni certifikat parën dhe prej vitit tjetër startojmë rregullisht. Më fort, ma ne nuk po him në pjesën tjetër mund detajeve dha. Faleminderit.
Faleminderit për pyetjen. Është interesant pyetja për Prishtinën specifike, po është e vërtetë që Prishtina sidomos ka pas një rritje të madhe të ndërtesave të reja që më bë vetëm 3 vitet e fundit më duket që janë prafërsisht 3 milion metra katror të reja që janë shtu, ose që ka pas aplikime për leje për ndërtime kryesisht për ndërtesa kolektive të banimit. Edhe qyteti ose komuna ka një rritje shumë të madhe se sa pjesë tjera të Kosovës, prandaj është me rëndësi ndoshta edhe fokusi te kjo pyetja. Duke vazhduar prej zotris Pahiut që përmendi standardet e ndërtimit, definitivisht duhen të jenë ato që i shtyn ka eficienca e energjisë apo ka ndërtimi më i qëndrueshëm i ndërtesave, ku është edhe aplikimi i disa masave si izolimi i ndërtesave, dritare më të eficiente. Po pas kësaj besoj që duhet edhe një mekanizëm financiar që mundet ta mundësoj investimin në këto ndërtesa, sidomos ndërtesat që janë më të vjetra edhe që janë në gjendje më të keqe. Këtu kemi pas një bashkëpunim edhe me MCC-n, ku kemi bërë disa modele të financimit me bashkëfinancim prej pronarëve edhe prej komunës, edhe prej donatorëve siç është MCC-ja. Besoj që kjo mundet të jetë një model që mundet me vazhdu me investu në ndërtesat kolektive banesore, se banimi kryesisht është të shku ma shumë në këtë sektor, e jo atë shumë në shtëpi individuale. Për realizimin e investimeve në ndërtesa kolektive, që është prap diçka shumë specifike edhe për Prishtinën, duhet cekim që duhet edhe ndryshime e kornizës regulative sa i përket menaxhimit të ndërtesave kolektive. Kjo deri tash nuk ka qenë shumë funksionale korniza rregulluese apo ligjore, siç kam dëgjuar tash është edhe qeveria në proces ndryshimit të ligjit ku bëhet ma e realizueshme kjo menaxhimi i ndërtesave kolektive apo hapësirave kolektive që do të jetë kyçe për mundësimin e financimit të masave të eficiencës në ndërtesat kolektive, që është ndoshta sektori më i vështirë për investime në eficiencë. Po ndalim këtu për momentin. Faleminderit.
Thanks for this question. I would have a multi-part answer, and the first one is a difficult political issue, and that is liberalization and cost-reflective tariffs. I think we heard already from several speakers this morning that Kosovo consumers do not face the true cost of their energy use. And if they did, they might make different decisions in their existing houses, in their new places that they buy. And I think those would then kind of translate into some of the demand for building standards, for products, et cetera. And then second, I think the government needs to find ways and identify the regulations that need to change that enable the private sector to come in and support response to some of the issues. So, find a way for ESCOs to work, or for on-bill financing. Many things that are held up could be useful solutions, but are held up by some legislative issues that don't make them currently viable solutions to this. And then, building on what Redon said, I think kind of finding ways to encourage homeowners associations and some manner, again, maybe this is partly regulatory, but some manner for customers to come together and express and execute their demand for energy efficiency, for better quality, for following building codes, et cetera. So, stop there.
Sitting on this part of the panel, you're not really left with much to say, but I can add that on what just Sarah said, that the low tariffs do not provide any incentive for people to just invest in green investments. And affordability also plays a role, which then requires for a safety net to be established as soon as possible to allow for these green investments to take a quicker pace. I can only say that the penetration of energy efficiency investments is below 10%, which indicates a huge opportunity for the sector. Sarah also mentioned ESCOs. We have been thinking and discussing about ESCOs since a couple of years ago. Kosovo is just too small, and we have inquired with existing clients in other countries. They're just not interested. First, because of the size of the economy, and then the lack of proper regulation that Redon mentioned, which is linked to housing associations, which are the ones that make a big chunk and they're not taking up investments because the regulation is not in place. It's hard to define liability for the common areas, people not paying maintenance fees, and how do you incentivize these people to take up investments? So all in all, these are the key areas, points to be considered and discussed. We have a credit line available, GFF, with partner financial institutions and microfinancial institutions, and individual houses are taking up it pretty well, and there is sufficient funding available. The question is, how do you incentivize, how do you push the housing associations to get more investments, and also incentivize new construction to build energy efficiency buildings. You don't have to be an expert. When you drive or walk around the city, you see new buildings that do not have proper glazing and insulation and so on. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Faleminderit, përshëndetje për gjithë. Gjithë se cili këto përfaqësojmë, domethënë, institucionet nga cilat vim, andaj nga Ministria e Ekonomisë dhe nga Departamenti i Energjisë, përkatësisht Divizioni për Burimet, Ripërtërishme dhe Eficiencë, do të mundohem të jap disa informacione se si ne zhvillojmë sektorin e burimeve të ripërtërishme dhe eficiencës, e posaçërisht si përgjegjësi e jona që është hartimi politikave për këtë sektor. Realisht ne e kemi një ligj për eficiencën e energjisë, mirë po ky ligj momentalisht është duke u rishikuar dhe është në hartim draftimi i koncept dokumentit për eficiencën e energjisë. Mirë po ne paralelisht jemi duke marrë edhe disa hapa konkret në lidhje me identifikimin e stimujve fiskal të cilët do të shërbenin që brenda këtij viti, domethënë qytetarët e vendit të mund të përdorin disa masa fiskale për uljen e reduktimit të shfrytëzimit të energjisë elektrike, edhe fokusi kryesor do të jetë te pompat termike, pasi që edhe aty, siç e përmenden edhe më herët folësit, është mundësia e kursimit të përdorimit të energjisë elektrike për ngrohje. Gjithashtu, në kuadër të Ministrisë është edhe Agjencioni për Eficiencën e Energjisë dhe Fondi i Eficiencës së Energjisë, të dy këta mekanizmat të cilat zbatojnë projekte të ndryshme me ndihmën e donatorëve dhe po ashtu edhe me ndihmën e buxhetit të Republikës së Kosovës, mirë po edhe nga këndvështrimi i sektorit të burimeve të ripërtërishme, duke marrë parasysh se burimet e ripërtërishme dhe eficienca janë gjithmonë dy sektor të cilët ndikojnë në zvoglimin e gazrave serë, mirë po njëkohësisht edhe reduktimin e përdorimit të energjisë elektrike nga këtu është fjala edhe për fosilet. Jemi në hartim të projektligjit për burimet e ripërtërishme të energjisë, e një prej kapitujve që është i lidhur edhe me mundësinë e përdorimit të paneleve solare për vetë konsum, domethënë që do të ndihmonte edhe në zbatimin, në përgjithësi dhe zhvillimin e masave të eficiencës së energjisë në ndërtesa.
Okay. First of all, thank you for the invitation. It's my honor and pleasure to be here and to support this event. And now back to your tricky question. I heard the whole conference from the very beginning today, from early in the morning, and I'm not 100% sure that we are still in the Balkans. It's exactly the same situation everywhere. It's also in Greece the same. It's not only Kosovo. Don't be afraid about that. We have all the same problems. We are very good in strategies. We are all generals. But when it comes to the implementation, if I ask now for 5 engineers to go out and make Pristina better, no one will come. So there are some steps that we must follow, specific steps. First of all, we must collect data. Do we have the data for Pristina? Do we know exactly what the buildings are consuming? I can bet that the public sector has not the data for the public buildings. And of course, it's more difficult for the private sector. But if you ask maybe the power providers, they can give data which are useful. And we can start from that point. We have also a lot of simulation tools now that we can project the consumption as it is. Then we have to calculate the potential, the efficiency potential. You will be shocked when you see how much potential it is in buildings in a city. I heard the number 40% in average comes from buildings. This is the country average. If you go inside the city, this percentage is much higher. We were also shocked in Greek cities when we went in and collecting data, and we saw that in the city, the participation of the building sector in consumption is 70% and not 40%. So it's more important what we are doing in buildings inside the city. Then, if we have the potential, and again, we have very good tools to calculate for a district, for example, or for a whole city, we can put the rules and the methodology. Okay, everyone will say, we have the rules. No problem, yes, but we have to implement the rules. We have to follow the rules. We have to be sure that these rules don't create a performance gap, because this is the main problem that we have in designing new homes and in renovating existing buildings. There is a huge gap between planning and implementation, and nobody cares about it. I saw hundreds of new houses around Pristina yesterday when I walked out, and nobody knows if these buildings are built according to the regulation that you have. Who is checking this? Are the engineers and the architects well trained to do this? So the next thing is rules and methodology. Then we have to find the tools, which is also very important. With what tool we do this? With what tool we will create the new buildings or renovating the old one? And of course, at the end, which is the most important, we have to find the staff. The staff. And not only engineers, but also the workers, the technicians. They have to be, okay, I do a perfect planning. Can the technician read this plan on job site? Can he see how he can install a window without thermal bridges? Maybe there are strange words in what I'm saying now, but this is engineering. This is very important. And we must have this. So this is for now, these are the titles. Maybe in the discussion, during the discussion, we can put also some other points.
Yes, please, Svrha.
Can I just respond to this? Because I actually think we have a lot of data. And MCC in the Threshold program has, we have a pilot project, which you can hear more about on the 10th as well. I think we have a lessons learned event that Nejat is, wherever he is, is facilitating. But one of the, both through that project of energy efficiency retrofits in households and apartment buildings, we have a lot of information about building. We also had a data challenge about energy, from which we got all the consumption data from KEDS, anonymized, but it gives you very good statistics. So I encourage, that's all freely available online. Anyone who wants this data can access it. Go to Millennium Foundation Kosovo? Millennium Foundation Kosovo, .org. Or mcc.gov and follow the links to the Kosovo site. But all of this data is available for analysis. And then just to the last point as well, I'll put in a plug for our upcoming Compact program, which is our new program at which we'll have a project specifically dedicated to the workforce issue. Because I agree there's a big gap in being able to find the staff, even in the energy efficiency programming that we have, getting staff before they all go to Germany to work is challenging. And I think there's Mr. Ternava talked about it as well. the balance of training here is not well focused necessarily on the needs of the economy. There is a lot of, I think there are more administration, law, and kind of government studies majors than everything else put together. So I think there clearly needs to be at some high level a rethinking of, a restructuring of what the future workforce is. And as Kosovo is making this transition, all of the other countries in this region are also making this transition, and there's an opportunity for Kosovo to take advantage of that if there can be motivation to start now and to get those people trained and available.
I also wanted to ask you a few other things, but please step in and then I will come in with my question.
Faleminderit. Po lidhna unë pak me kolegun vjeshmërinë e dy parafalsve. Pjesën e dhonave shpjegoj edhe dritoresha MCC-s, edhe pjesëmarrjen e objekteve, unë po hy pak te rregullat çka kemi na në aspektin ligjor dhe teknik, reglat e kalkulimit edhe çështjet e trajnimit. Na si shtete kemi përvecu, do me tha, kemi bërë transpozimin e direktivës 1031, ndikon fond të vitit 2016-2017 atu. E kemi kompletu në vitin 2018 me rregullore teknike, do me tha, kemi metodologjinë e kalkulimit kombëtar, procedurën e certifikimit ndërtesave, sistemin e inspektimit ngroje ftojeve dhe rregullorën për kërkesat minimale. Në atë kohë është përvecu edhe një vegël ISBM, vegël angleze, që ka përmes Bezhit, do me thonë një projekti të Bezhit, e kemi përvecu në maj trajnime edhe ju certifiku njerëz për përdorimin e veglës. Teknikisht është punu me atë vegël, zyrtarisht nuk u him funksion as vegla, pas nuk u prodhu as një certifikate performancë energjetike, po flas në formatin zyrtar. Shka ka qenë se me lish performancës, kër u transpozu direktiva, ka mejnë 2-3 institucione përgjithësia. Edhe si vjet, vitin e kalun edhe si vjet, kemi bo analizat edhe kemi hinë në mandamentim të ligjit performancë energjetike, definimi i përgjithësive dhe i kapaciteteve kush çka mundet me bo. Në me thotë, deri në atë kohë jemi konë na si ministri që kemi përgjithësim për ndërtesa, Departamenti Energjisë edhe Agjencioni Eficiencës të Energjisë që është ministri, edhe si vjetë paralelisht të të tentu edhe ligjin tonë me bo plotësim ndryshim, po edhe ligji Eficiencës të Energjisë, po i energjisë si koncept dokument. Çka jem të bo tash për momentin, Agjencioni Eficiencës të Energjisë ka pas me bo certifikimin e ekspertave, do me thotë 3 vjeti kemi hu për shkak se s'kemi pas certifikim profesionistat që kanë me lëshu certifikat performancë energjetike, po shpresojmë edhe synimi joni është edhe politik, edhe i aspektit tonë si administrat, që ka jem teknik, që në fund vitit më lëshu bile certifikata e parë më testu. Kemi bo ndryshim sot veri, do me thot veglës kalkulimit, tani jem të e bo gati, e kemi marë sot veri Gjerman Instituti Fraunhofer, është të punu një grup teknik prej fillimit vitit me përvecu atë sistem, sigurisht do të ketë trajnime, edhe po shpresojmë ka fundi verës në vjesht me pas certifikimin e ekspertave të grupit partë ekspertave, për ndryshe legislacioni dhe regullat janë definune dhe mundet me startu me lëshimin e certifikatat parat performancë energjetike. I krejt sistemi është ndërtu në asisoj që objektet e reja në kohën kur aplikohet për kushte për leje ndërtimore duhet me pas certifikatën, do me thoj nështrohet edhe certifikimit energjetik, edhe në fond me rastin e pranimit teknik, do me thoj lëshohet CPE e dytë ose certifikata e dytë. Kjo është paka shumë çka është të bo, edhe një pjesë më të rëndësishme kemi fillu vitin e kalun, si vjetë besoj deri gusht shtator përfundon, është duke bërë regjistri nacional, është një vegël, është avnia në sesionet më hershme keni përmend, jem përkrahur prej gizit, i ka si sistem, e ka komplet eficiencën e energjisë integruar në brenda. I ka modulet e certifikatës performancës, modulet e ekspertëve, sistemin e vetë kontrollit edhe të ekspertëve, edhe CPE-ve, edhe i ka dhonat komunale të objekteve publike që ka me ka. Do me thotë, gjithçka që ka me eficiencë energjisë, ka me ka një vegël e veçantë, me qasje ndryshme varësisht cilë institucion i shfrytëzon ato dhona dhe ka obligim ligjor. Në fund të mujt tret është publikuar zyrtarisht, kena mujt me marrë me veti, tipologjia e performancës energjetike ndërtese, është një dokument që u punu për ekspertave në përkrahje të gizit, edhe ku i ka tipet i ndonë periudha 10 vjeçare, do me thonë prej 2050 e kënej çdo vjet çfarë tipe, çfarë modalitete, çfarë tipe shtëpia kemi dhe me standardizu çka mundet mu bë ndërhyrje dhe çfarë eficiencë mundet mu arrit në ato objekte. Pak a shumë është kjo si informat për audiencë.
Okay, I see here also other panelists who would like to come in, but just to say the classification of buildings, because you were speaking now a lot about new buildings, but what we do see here is, like in any other place, a mix. So we have very old buildings, then we have buildings maybe from the Yugoslav era, and then we have something in between, probably without any regulation or very loose regulations, and now more of perhaps, you know, more following the legislation. So wouldn't it be necessary, and this really goes to the two colleagues of the ministries, but also for the others to come in, wouldn't it be needed, because on one hand we say, yes, we kind of have an idea and their data is available on how much energy is used, and you looked at different parts then in the city, etc. I mean, this is how it's done. But wouldn't it be needed to do a kind of an inventory of what kind of buildings do exist? So really by year, and this is also, I mean, I just recently bought a house. I mean, this is usually what you get in other countries when you buy a house. Then you are told, okay, this house is from this and this year, and it has this and this energy efficiency. And therefore, and that comes to my next point, when we're talking about tariffs. I mean, normally according to the building, you're ending up in some category, but also here, and that is a bit, again, I'm a foreigner, so maybe I would need to get used to it, but I find it very strange because you have day and night tariffs. This is all, or do you look into changing that as well? So maybe again, the two colleagues from the ministries a little bit, I mean, we have talked about legislation, we have talked about data which is available, but what about the classification of the buildings? This inventory, what kind of buildings are there? And what are you going to do about it? And also this, for me at least, quite unusual day and night tariffs. I don't know if you would like to come in, or you first, and then as well.
Për tarifat nuk më fol, nuk kam kompetencë, as nuk I di detajet. Në aspektin e klasifikimit të objekteve, po kthehem, me legjislacion është e caktuar cilat objekte nuk ka nevoja, nuk I nënshtrohen ligjit e eficiencës energjisë, janë zakonisht objektet e trashëgimisë kulturore edhe në specifik tjetër, po kjo kryesisht është. Te klasifikimi I objekteve përmenda unë tipologjinë e objekteve është një dokument teknik ku ka edhe masa mbrenda dhe është I dalë me klasifikime me periudha vjetore, do me thonë 10 vjeçare, çfarë tipesh ndërtesa kanë qenë kohën e komunizmit, 60, 70, 80, 90, sa mundet me ka shpenzimi tyne dhe sa mundet më mbri mu mbërri eficienca e energjisë në ato objekte, është shembull për secilin vit është të trajtuar spaku në objekt, në mënyrë që personat fizik me pas sa ma lehtë mu gjinë në eficiencë e energjisë se çka mujnë me kursy dhe sa mujnë me pa kursimet. Për ndryshe, certifikimi, ku e përmena certifikimi i objekteve fillon në fund këtij viti, eventualisht vitin e ardhshëm, edhe gjitha objektet e reja, objektet që renovohen, objektet që lëshohen me qira, që shitën duhet me pas certifikat me performancë energjisë, edhe ato kanë me pas pasaportën energjetike, në cilën kategori është, sa i ka shpenzimet edhe krejtë.
Thank you. Would you like to add something or yes?
So I just wanted to chip in and be a bit blunt and just say the key word is here incentive. And I'm going to use myself as an example. What incentive do I have to invest 10,000 euro, for example, in energy efficient heating pump when my bill for electricity and heating, which is the same one, is for a house of 150 square meter, around 150 euros a month. So I'm a person, lucky one, to have a good job and good salary. And do I have any incentive? None. So with these tariffs, you cannot force anyone to get into these investments unless they're really very environmental friendly and they really take seriously the climate issues. So,
which we should all do.
Well, indeed, but when you struggle with, buying bread for your kids in the morning, then you become less aware of the environmental issues, which is often the case, which is the second key word, is the safety net. Because affordability is quite a big issue in Kosovo. And I hear from Svrha that certification is starting and will go on. I just don't know the details, and it's not a question, but unless it becomes mandatory for a couple of things, like for instance, I happen to live a few years in Germany, and I know that you cannot rent a house with a category below D. So that's one thing. So it has to be mandatory. It has to, regulate the sector. So if we leave it just up to the will of citizens, we're not going to move ahead quickly. And I mentioned the issue about multi-apartment housing. People are not paying maintenance fees for the elevator. Every housing multi-apartment building has a chip because you need to pay for it so that you can use the elevator. And if you don't pay, they cut you off. So it's 10 euros a month, up to 20 maybe. And that's a big problem here in Kosovo. And I want to use an example with Avni and Kadri during the break. Kadri asked Avni, he obviously has a technical background, and they did a quick math. And Kadri put on table the data that there are imported until now 40,000 of heat pumps, not energy efficient, in these past 10 years or whatever. And a simple math says that they are consuming 360 megawatts, right, Avni? So, and just the connection, not heat pumps, electric heater. Exactly, yeah. Thanks, Avni. So, these people have bought 600 euro electric heater because they don't care. The bill is still 150 euros. If the bill was 400, a simple math would show that he has incentive to invest 5,000 euros, which Avni briefly explained, and he can do it again. An integrated solution, including energy efficient heat pump and solar, which can bring up to 50% consumption. 360 megawatt, it's a capacity of one large thermal power plant. So keywords are incentive, regulation. So, yeah.
But we see that energy prices are going up, not only in Kosovo, but everywhere. There are reasons for that, and one reason is Mr. Putin. So isn't it already coming? Or do you think it's too little and what is actually needed is higher tariffs and that's the solution, and then everyone will hate the government? So how to get out of this dilemma? Yes, please, Charlie.
Thank you. Maybe also related to the previous discussion on tariffs. I agree. I mean, the tariffs have to be more cost reflective. They need to be more, let's say, realistic, so to say. But the other thing we have to keep in mind, especially in Kosovo, where the residential sector consumes more than 70% of the energy for heating, but a lot of this heating is not supplied by electricity. It's actually biomass or firewood. So about more than 70% of households actually use biomass or firewood for heating. So the impact of gas and electricity prices might not directly impact those prices, especially since a lot of the firewood is informally or illegally logged. And this is one of the main challenges, especially in the heating sector, as we discussed earlier. It's a major also cause of air pollution in the country, actually the biggest contributor to air pollution coming from domestic heating. And also the prices of firewood and also coal to some extent, which is not used as much as firewood, but still informally sold at not cost reflective tariffs, is a major challenge. So I think there needs to be done, there needs more attention in terms of forestry management and stewardship, more development of the forestry sector in the sense of better management, but also improving the supply chains of producing more sustainable biomass. Because while there is a lot more firewood logged than is sustainable in the country, there's still potential for sustainable production of biomass in the country from the existing forest, whether it's from the cleaning process of the forest or better management of the forests. On the electricity sector or the heating that comes from electricity, agree that the current tariff structure, or not the one, well, I don't know if it's still in force, but the one that was before, let's say, February, wasn't really incentivizing buying heat pumps, which are the efficient options, but actually it was incentivizing purchase of inefficient electric boilers or electric heaters, which have been imported a lot in the last 2 or 3 years, and we've seen the data of 40% increase in the last 2 or 3 years. So I think while we need incentives for heat pumps, we also need more disincentives for these inefficient electric heaters, whether it's maybe higher taxes, because people do not account for the savings they might get in the future. They're really looking at how much they can purchase a very cheap electric heater today. To really factor in this cost of future savings, I think it's important to think about maybe some fiscal measures to disincentivize the use of inefficient electric heaters. But in general, right now, there are not many options for more sustainable heating between heat pumps and more eco-design biomass heating systems. These are really what are really available right now. I think incentivizing more efficient use of these appliances is key for the energy strategy going forward, because it really affects other sectors as well, including electricity sector, but also forestry sector and generally the environment, whether it's air pollution, air quality, or forestry sector. Thank you.
Thank you. I actually had Stefan in my mind, and then, but with a particular question as well. It's a bit awkward to say it here because we are in this huge conference room, using electricity, not having any daylight. But isn't it that we should look more into solar energy? I mean, this is certainly a place, if you compare it, for example, with my home country, Germany, Kosovo has much more sunny days. So isn't it? I mean, you were talking more about forest, but isn't that actually the first pick? I mean, in the end of the day, we know in the end it has to be a mix of everything. But isn't it a huge potential when we're talking about buildings? When you drive through Kosovo, I mean, the rooftops should be be just full of solar panels and you almost see none. I don't understand that. So Stefan is coming from Greece, so
we have even more sun. Eh?
Yeah, you have even more sun. So
but you know this sun only for vacation, not for.
Okay, so enlighten us, and also don't forget what you wanted to say in response to Mr. Bertoli.
But please allow me to say something about low tariffs, because I'm not 100% sure that this is the problem. Really, I can tell you what happens. No, it's not a problem. I can tell you what is happening in Greece when we have high tariffs. It's very simple. People don't heat the houses. They don't heat the houses because it's expensive. So this is called energy poverty. It's not so monolithic to say, okay, I will rise the prices, the tariffs, and then people start to think about efficiency. No, they don't start. Sorry to say that, with all respect. They don't start. So we have to find, the solutions are totally different. And the main solution is we have to have well-informed people. This is growing at the moment, all over Europe, at least. We face in Greece that the citizens are more educated and informed even than the engineers. The engineers they don't know how to do it. The potential client is coming to us and said, I want an energy efficient house, and the engineer doesn't know how to do it. This is the main problem. The main problem has to do with people, not with tariffs, in my opinion. Now let's go to solar. And let's go to the example that was mentioned before about the elevator in the multifamily building, which is not paid, or it's paid because it's low. Can you imagine a building, a multifamily house, where the consumption is so low, or the demand is so low, and in this situation I can put a small photovoltaic on the roof and take all the costs of elevator and all the common costs, and even take the heating and the cooling through this photovoltaic. So imagine a house, imagine a building where all the energy needed is produced by renewable energy sources. Who will care about the elevator costs? Who will care about the heat pump costs? No one, because everything is zero. I don't live in a multi-family house, I live in a single-family house, but my bill is zero. At that moment where most of the Greek families face bills of more than 1,000 euros per 2 months, I have a zero bill because I have a house that demands very low and I can produce it by myself. Imagine this in a wider scale of communities. Imagine this in energy communities. This could be the solutions. And about the classification that I heard before, be careful on that, because the next step that at least EU is demanding is monitoring of the buildings. So the performance gap will be very important. If you don't follow the rules that you set for your buildings, then it will be problematic again, because all things that has to do with taxes or with climate conditions and climate crisis, they have to be monitored in every building. And this is very, very important. We do have the technology for that. It's very simple. It's nothing difficult. So this point is also very, very important about the classification. We don't need just a classification for the classification. We need a good classification for every building.
Thank you, Stefan. That was very clear, and I do appreciate that. Let me now come to, again, I'm struggling with your name. So Ms. Chorai, okay. In German it would be Korai. This is why I'm a bit... And I know that you also wanted to talk about something very specific, and I have noted it down because we talked about your contribution here during the lunch break. So you wanted to talk a little bit about the pilot project of auctions. And what you can tell us about that one. So I would like to give you 2 minutes for that, but I would also like to ask you about the elephant in the room, and this is what is about the energy strategy. Because we do know that also us from the EU, we have knocked on your doors and we have said, well, could we see it? Could we please look at it, etc., etc.? And somehow the deadlines, moving backwards. And we do understand that's a difficult undertaking, but perhaps you could give us all an indication when we could really see the document. But first about the auctions. And sorry for gun pointing you somehow here. Thank you.
Faleminderit. U përmend edhe para folësve para ditës strategjia e energjisë është një draft I cili ende nuk është, domethënë, I gatshëm të ndahet me publikun, mirëpo elementet kryesore të saj, domethënë, kapacitetet të cilat parashikohen të ndërtohen në bazë të strategjisë për sektorin e burimeve të ripërtërishme, përmendje dhe ministri janë ndikon rreth 1400 megawatt. Gjithashtu pjesëmarrja e burimeve të ripërtërishme në vitin 2031, domethënë konsumi I energjisë elektrike do të jetë 35%. Mirëpo mbasi jemi këtu, desha ta theksoj edhe një objektiv specifik që është strategji që nuk u përmend sot paradite për eficiencën e energjisë, masi edhe veç folëm deri tash, domethënë është një objektiv I cili parashikon promovimin e eficiencës së energjisë dhe kufizimi I konsumit final deri në vitin 2031 nuk mund të I kaloj nivelin prej 1877 KTOE. Dhe domethënë po ashtu parashikohet të bëhet edhe ngritja kapaciteteve të kogjenerimit me termokosin, edhe një projekt I ri që është Solar for Kosovo, që është me KFV-n dhe I Bjardin. Më thonë është një projekt I cili do të ndihmoj në rritjen e përdorimit të ngrohjes nga burimet e ripërtërishme dhe me siguri do ta ulë edhe kërkesën e përdorimit të energjisë elektrike për ngrohje për qytetarët e Prishtinës. Ndërsa sa I përket ankondeve, unë ma herët e ceka se ne si ministri jemi në proces të hartimit të projektligjit për burimet ripërtërishme, I cili pritet të finalizohet deri në fund këtij viti. Mirë po, ne si ministri kemi vendosur që paralelisht të themelojmë një grup punues me institucionet relevante që ndihmojnë në zhvillimin e sektorit burimeve të ripërtërishme, që me kornizën aktuale ligjore, me disa ndryshime të legjislacionit sekondar të shkoj me ankondin e parë, pilot, I cili do të zhvillohet gjatë këtij viti. Dhe aktualisht ne si grup punuese kemi përgatitur një rekomandim për ministrën, dhe rekomandimi I grupit punues është që ankondi I parë të jetë me teknologjinë solare dhe kapaciteti të jetë dikon rreth 100 megawatt. Rekomandimi shkon që projekti të jetë I ndarë në 3 lote, në mënyrë që disa të jenë projekte më të vogla dhe të japet mundësia që konkurenca të jetë sa më shumë, sa më e madhe dhe çmimi I cili, domethënë, fitohet në ankon të jetë sa më I konkurrueshëm dhe më I lirë. Kështu që në këtë fazë, domethënë, jemi edhe në mundësinë e identifikimit të tokave publike, nëse ekzistojnë toka që ne si shtet mund t'ju ofrojmë investitorëve pa probleme, pa konteste, edhe me ndihmën e Bashkimit Evropian dhe për zyrën e BE-s këtu në Kosovë, jemi duke realizuar një studim I cili do të na ndihmojë në identifikimin e tokave publike për ndërtimin e kapaciteteve të reja gjeneruese nga BRE për këtë periudhë. Gjithashtu duhet ta ceki se në strategji parashikohet që çdo vit të jetë një kapacitet prej 150 deri në 200 I vendosur në ankonde, I kombinuar, domethënë, teknologji të erës dhe teknologji solare. Po ashtu kemi vendosur edhe një cak për konsumatorët për vetë që prodhojnë domethënë energji nga panelet solare dhe përdorin ata për vetë konsum, dikon 100 MW kapacitet instaluar do të jetë deri në vitin 2031. Mirë, po kjo nuk do të thotë që është një cak i cili e limiton. Ai është një cak që do të mundohem ta promovojmë në mënyrën më të mirë të mundshme, duke analizuar dhe mundësitë e stimulimit në bazë të projektligjit për burimet e ripërtërishme, do të shkohet me faturimin neto, do të thonë net billing, deri tani ka qenë net metering, dhe mirë, po kjo është një kompetencë e cila do zhvillohet nga zyra rregullatorit për energji. Do të thonë, këto janë disa nga zhvillimet cilat na jemi duke punuar aktualisht në Departamentin e Energjisë, sa i përket sektorit të burimeve të ripërtërishme të energjisë.
Thank you. I have just gotten a sign here. We have 20 minutes more, and allow me now to ask Sarah to tell us a little bit, and again, many of you might know it from the media, also maybe you work with that, from the MCC. So I would like to give you the floor to tell us a bit about the Compact program. If possible, also to link it a little bit with the topic of this session here. And after Sarah, I would really like the audience to ask questions. So perhaps then the 15 remaining minutes to use it for questions from you. But please go ahead.
Thanks. I was hoping I would be able to jump in after Bessiana, because I think battery storage, it sounds a little bit far outside the kind of, it's not an energy efficiency measure. But we already heard this morning from Umer and from others that kind of Kosovo is not quite ready to facilitate and to integrate the level of renewables that is envisaged in the plan. And I think when you think about the potential electrification of all of the heat, all of the kind of coal and wood users as well, that's going to add to the gap, and especially when you think about when do we use heat. It's not like it's on all day, or I hope not, or else it's you're not using it efficiently. But it's everyone's going to turn that on when they get home from work, and that's where flexibility of the grid and ability to respond to big spikes in demand or supply is really important. So that's where we really come in. We, in our analysis of the energy system, one of the root cause problems of insufficient or low quality energy and lack of investment in generation was really this lack of flexibility. And there were we heard informally about a lot of, or kind of informal barriers that were being put up to rooftop solar, to large scale prosumers, because the grid has a limited capacity to accept these types of intermittent renewables. So we're supporting secondary and tertiary reserves, as well as energy arbitrage in kind of two phases. One is a system set for secondary reserves that will be owned by cost, 90 megawatt hours of battery storage, and then 250 megawatt hours for all of these other purposes. But I will say, I think there's not enough government money and not enough grant money for all of the new energy generation to be government owned and to be kind of public entities. And so I'm really always happy to hear about the plans and the steps forward on auctions, because I think overall we need to figure out, and I said this already a little bit, but how to incentivize and facilitate the private sector to build what Kosovo needs to realize this energy transition. I will disagree a little bit with with Stefan, just because, you know, if the tariff remains at 6 cents, which is the lowest in Europe, the lowest in the region, it really is not feasible. You do need a really robust vulnerable consumers program, which I know World Bank and others have supported in terms of the planning, and we heard from Mr. Gashi as well that that's kind of in plan, but then implementation, it needs to be implemented, and that's where this can fall down frequently. It needs to be integrated in the region. So the battery storage will help all of that. The integration and the working and the realization of this broader kind of green energy vision, but there's still this missing piece a little bit on tariffs and liberalization, and then, you know, as well, I guess to your point as well. You have the tariffs piece and then the incentives piece, and I know we heard already from Bessiana and you know, I know EBRD has a program, GIZ has a program looking at either subsidized loans or direct subsidies, and that's again where people can access and can make this transition. I know, Beckham, you were saying that you didn't think people would invest in these areas because the cost is so low. I think everyone has been hearing for so long that the costs are going to go up, although I don't know if they ever will. That really, I think the response to our pilot subsidy program was surprising. Each window, even though we were lowering the subsidy, had more and more interest. And that is because people really do see that the time is coming, even if they don't see it on the paper. You know, they're getting the same bill they always did, even if, but they see it coming down the road, that they do need to make these investments. But I'll stop there because there's more on Friday at 10 o'clock at Sirius Hotel.
Okay, thank you so much. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. Now I would like to turn to the audience. Do you have any questions to our panelists? Do we have someone with a mic? Okay, good.
Deshta Stefanin me pyet. Atë ka ndihmu dikush që ke bo shtëpinë me zero energji?
Of course, many people, a whole system. And this was my second diploma, let's say, because I was already 50 years old. So, and studied again about energy efficiency. I needed something like 2 or 3 years. I went to Passive House Institute in Darmstadt, Germany. I met Professor Wolfgang Feist, which is the inventor of Passive House, and I asked him, can I realize a Passive House in Athens? He said, in the country of Socrates, of course. This was the answer. And he was right. In the country of Socrates with this sun. And Socrates said the definition of the house of Socrates was people are happy because they are comfortable in winter and in summer in their house. So this was the first step. Then I needed something like 2 or 3 years in order to get certified for that. I designed a house. My first house was almost a passive house, not exactly, because I didn't manage to have the blowed or test the air tightness that I needed. But now I'm sure 100% that we can implement it in Greece as we can implement it all over the world. And I lived for 7 years in a passive house which I have renovated. It was an old uninsulated house of the 60s. I totally renovated. I have monitored for 7 years. I have all the data every 10 minutes from this house. I can show you everything. It's open to anyone who is interested. And now I have to leave, unfortunately, next month. And I'm searching now for my next house, so I will do it again because I like it. And I like to do it for myself because this is my job. I like to share knowledge with all the people, with all engineers. So I train now, as I was trained 10 years ago, now I train other people. And maybe this is one of the reasons that I'm here. I would like to support you in this sector, especially with the staff. To get people trained, to get people educated, young people. I was shocked when I saw the average age of Kosovo people. So get your young people trained for the future. This is the main important thing that you have to do.
Do me thonë, përveç Sokratit, ty s'ka një mu kërkush kështu si shtet. Përveç Sokratit që e ke marrë këshillin e ti, do me thonë, shteti s'ka suportu. Shteti me ndojnë dim, me nëj kredi, me nëj.
We are after lunch, so we can speak between us. Nobody hears us. It's the same situation also in Greece. My opinion is, after 60 years, that good things happened only in coincidence. So if the state leaves a door open, you must throw in as much things that you want, as much good ideas that you have, throw them in, because the door will close very quickly. So these 10 years that we deal with energy efficiency in Greece, we use all the times that the state gave us the opportunity to deal with them, to discuss with them, to propose them some good solutions, and they heard us. Now they know us, they know that if we say something, it is for good, and they accept us. Most of the times, not always, but most of the times. I can give you an example. Last year, we have convinced the state to put the ventilation in residential buildings into the subsidies, which was not until last year. So now many people in Athens, or in cities like Athens, they understand the difference of quality of life of having a house, a residential building with ventilation, and one without ventilation. The people with ventilation, they don't care about mold, they don't care about condensation, they don't have problems with quality of inside air. The other people, they just continue to have the same problems as before. They also lower the heating because it is expensive. So if the conditions are even worse. This is the situation. So it was very, very positive that the government heard us last year and put the ventilation systems into the subsidies renovation system of the country.
Okay, before we go to the next question, I know, just a second, on your question or on your comment, you know, it's not, and I here don't want to take the responsibility away from the government, not at all. But like Stefan said, it's also not always good to wait for the perfect conditions and then to do something. When we started the Kosovo Sustainable Development Week 5 years ago, there was no EU Green Deal at that time, and there was no Western Balkan Green Agenda. So this forum was pretty much, you know, alone and a forerunner. And now we have all these very important documents and very important agreements. And now we have suddenly also, we had COVID, then we had, now we have the Ukraine war. We are all in the energy crisis, not only Kosovo, so whole Europe. So, you know, you need also sometimes to push a little bit for good things in order to make a difference. So just a bit of a motivation, but let me now hand over to my colleague, please.
Thank you. My question is related to the cost of, let's say, not to say zero energy consumption building, but let's put like low energy consumption building as one step
was comparing to the zero energy consumption building. What is the difference between, in percentage, if you can tell us, between if you renovate like standard energy efficiency measures and then you put the measures that make very low energy consumption measure, what is this difference? And just one information also, maybe it's interesting to share when it comes who teach us and who support us. We had a case to explain to some of our ex-professors, and one of them was saying, is this a utopia? So it's, I think it's a matter of cost, but it will be nice if you can tell us how much is this difference?
Officially, according to statistics, it is worldwide at the moment. If you build a low energy building or a passive house building, it is something like 5 to 8% more expensive than the best conventional building that you can build according to local regulations. But this is the general statistic. Even with these prices, 5 to 8% means if you have a cost, let's say, of about 1,000 euros per square meter, it is something like 1,100. Okay, you can have a mortgage of 5 to 8 years, which is quickly for a house that has a life minimum 50 years. So this is the typical question, the typical answer. But we have now studies and we have now statistics from US, which shows us that if you design well, and this is why the design is very important, and this is why we need very good, very educated staff. If you design well, your low energy building can be even cheaper than the conventional according to national regulations. And we have now studies in Massachusetts and in Canada, in Vancouver, where we see that the same design team made a building, planned a building and implemented the building for the first time. There they have something like 8% more costs. Then in the second project, after 1 year, they were 3% lower. And in the third project, they were even lower than the conventional. They were minus 3%. So you see that knowledge is very important, experience is very important, design is very important. And if you do like this, then you have better results. But in order to have these results, you have to convince the architects to get educated about energy efficiency. They don't want. If you come to Greece and say to an architect, you must know energy simulation. He says, what? No. I have the mechanical engineer there. I give them the plans and he has to solve the problem of heating and cooling. This is wrong. This is totally wrong. So we do believe that year by year the cost will be lower, there will be no comparison, and of course the quality of this building and the quality of life in this building is much higher than conventional buildings.
Yes, please.
Maybe this is a particularly Kosovo problem, but it's not, because there's a study from America that I just read that the actual energy savings from energy efficiency investments, I don't remember where it was off the top of my head, but I can find you the article, were 40% lower than the designed specifications, so 40% lower than the efficiency expected. And that is because of construction, people leaving a gap, not fully sealing things. And you know, I think if you are thinking about making sure that the designs, the good designs, so first you have to start with the designs, are actually implemented properly, that I think would be a very big challenge in Kosovo, and maybe speaks again, I think Besnik this morning was saying inspectorate, like this is where there has to be some monitoring system that has bite, has to come in, so that what you get out at the end is actually what was designed for. And I think that will be a big challenge that Kosovo should invest in some way.
Thank you, Sarah. We do have just 4 minutes left. I'm just looking in the audience if there are any burning questions. Okay, maybe we can take, so there are 2 people, right? The gentleman here, okay. So maybe, and please be precise and also tell us whom you expect the answers from. Because for the conclusions, I would just like to make one more total round. Okay, go.
Hi, my name is Dritë. I work at MFK as energy specialist. Firstly, to answer your question about day and night tariff, probably you know, but since we have this surplus of production of energy during night, we incentivize Kosovo incentivize the usage of energy during the night, because it's too difficult to suppress and to keep it stable in certain megawatts, the production of generation of energy. As for the question, I have some unclarities for the strategy of energy and also input to go back to the Beckham's, question on incentivization. I was always discussed and think how about people actually who consume less or are more efficient to have some kind of credit on their bills as well. For example, that was, I think, years ago introduced to energy efficiency law, that people, because we are in a crisis, I mean this unstable energy supply we have recently, and I think also it continues to be present in Kosovo. I was thinking if our ministry had thought about that aspect too, and also I heard mentioning this 35% of renewable penetration in the system by the end of this 10-year strategy. Is that linked to the renewable technologies in the energy efficiency system, or just a generation, building the new generating capacities from wind, solar, and other renewables? Thank you.
Okay, we just take one more, and then, yes, please.
Jam Fatondeva nga Instituti për Planifikim Hapësinor, po në këtë rast po flas veç në cilësinë e arkitektit, inxhinierit që po pëtentson zoti Stefano. Me plotësu zonjën Sara në Kosovë, në Fakultetin e Arkitekturës, inxhinierët trajnohen, ushtrohen edhe me llogaritë se cilin lloj të izolimit me koeficientet adekuat të përqimit energjisë. Kështu që nuk është mungesë e edukimit inxhinierëve, arkitektëve në Kosovë, por mangësia është të zbatimi, varësisht prej investitorit, qoftë privat apo i në ndonjë kompanie që dirigjon me inxhinierët. Të eficienca nështë prej MCC-s, nëse hala është në program, veç izolimi apo eficienca në ndërtesat publike, ka me kalu nështë ndojnë dimes edhe të ndërtesat private. Ndërtesat po flasë shumë banesore apo dhe individuale. Unë më ka rasti që i njoh 2 kompani në Gjakov që ndërtojnë privat, izolimin e jashtëm me kanë 14 cm të stiroporit C4, jo C3, po më të dendun. Dritarët që i përdorin për njohuri edhe zotnis Stefanit janë me 7 ura termike. Edhe 3 palë gjama me mbushje të gazit. Kështu që nuk kemi kaloj mungin këtë aspekt, veç që duhet nështë ta përkraje financiare për i burimeve donatorëve. Faleminderit.
Okay, I'm afraid we are almost at the end. I would like now to ask you all one last question. And to answer her question, I give the ones from, I think it goes more to the ministries, right? I give the colleagues from the ministry one sentence more, And my last round is now Kosovo Sustainable Development Week is 5 years. So if we meet here in 5 years, what will we discuss when it's about building efficiency? Will the situation be different? Only one sentence, you can also say yes or no, and again the ministries they have one sentence more, and then you maybe can discuss also individually with the lady. Thank you so much. We're starting with you, Mr. Spahiwe. Thank you.
Pavarësisht krejt si institucionet, si shteti, si qytetarët, me thonë është ma shpejt lëvizje qytetarët se sa institucionet, ka përparime çdo vit. Deshtum apo s'deshtum, ajo është evidente. Bekimin e kisha plotësuar në fund, nuk është vullnetare, është strikt, ka kërkesa minimale edhe standardet janë caktuar për objekte të reja dhe për renovim. Do me thonë, nuk është e lane hapun, po janë kërkesat minimale që duhet me zbatu. Problemi jo që s'kemi startu strikt me zbatu. Ky zbatim ka me shku përmes drejtorive të urbanizmit, edhe Ministrisë për objekte kategorisë tretë. Për KSDW-n përgjithësi o negatin shumicën e takimeve më komp, thash, ka përparime, ka ndryshime, edhe shpresoj që në tarën do t'jetë më mirë. Çka nuk potencova janë 2 programe, 2 fizibilitetet maja të esë për sektorin e banimit publik edhe privat, me Bankën Qendrore të Këshillit të Evropës, që gati jemi në prag marrëveshjes, do të thonë gjatë këtij viti, që bëhet fjalë për kredit maja në sektorin e banimit qoftë në bashkëprodhësi ndërtesave, po edhe për objekte të shtëpive, individuale renovimin, që besoj të 2 këto programe ka me pasur komponentën e eficiencës së energjisë brenda. Faleminderit.
Thank you. So, where we are in 5 years?
I think one very important topic for next year should be probably sustainable heating, or the sustainability of heating, because I think this is one of the biggest challenges in the decarbonization process, but also in terms of improving the or reducing the impact on the environment. If you look at the heating sector right now in Kosovo, it really is the one that causes most challenges. It's the major contributor to air pollution. It also increases electricity demand during the winter. So if you look at biomass used for heating, it is highly polluting. If you look at electricity heating, it is highly inefficient and very carbon intensive, because you're generating this coal-dominated energy through a very inefficient electricity grid, and by the time it goes into an inefficient electric heater, you have so much losses, and all of this is just all of these losses in the network are increasing the amount of carbon emissions for the heating sector. So I think focusing on the heating sector is something that should be probably discussed in the next 5 years more intensively. Thanks.
Will we be here talking about energy efficiency in 5 years? Absolutely. I don't think this is a 5-year problem. I think this is, a decade problem at least. As to your question, MCC does not, in the Compact program, have funds dedicated to this, but I know there's a number of mechanisms that the government is pursuing, including IPA funds and maybe World Bank support for further private sector investment, and whether that's residential or business support. So I don't think this is an easy, there's no easy solutions, and it takes time, and it probably doesn't help that there's an energy crisis and the government's budget strained, etc. But yes, we will absolutely be here.
Thank you.
I would just agree with Sarah. There is a lot to be done, so we'll probably be discussing the same, hopefully with a lot of efficiencies already achieved by then. I just wanted quickly to the architect, the gentleman, to promote the GFF, which is a credit line enabled from EBRD to commercial banks in Kosovo, and companies like the one you mentioned, building in Jakova, they can benefit up to 20% grants. So please pass the note. It's with ProCredit, Raiffeisen, and BPB. We didn't mention today the private sector. The focus was on the residential. Just a quick note is something that the private sector is made 99% by SMEs in Kosovo, which is far beyond any records in the region, not to mention Europe. And these companies have been hit quite hard by the pandemic. And there is a SME reboot program available again from EBRD to support investments in efficiencies, which is the backbone, and the competitiveness of SMEs in Kosovo will largely depend on their ability to take up these investments and increase their competitiveness. Otherwise, it's not going to be good in the private sector. So I hope the private sector will get a chance to be discussed in more time.
Fillimisht ndoshta përgjigjem pyetjes dritës për shkak të kapaciteteve të vendosura 1400 MW, siç e din deri tani prodhimi i energjisë elektrike nga burimet të Ripërtërishme është dikun 5%, kështu që ky prodhim domethënë matet pastaj nga ana e konsumit. Caku domethënë ose pjesëmarrja burimeve të Ripërtërishme të energjisë si target domethënë matet në anën e konsumit, kështu që në konsumin e përgjithshëm të energjisë elektrike do të jetë 35% pjesëmarrje të burimeve të Ripërtërishme. Ndërsa sa i përket se si do të duket pas 5 viteve java zhvillimit të qëndrueshëm, po besoj me këto dinamikat e zhvillimit të sektorit të energjisë, prap temat kryesore do të jenë burimet e Ripërtërishme të energjisë dhe eficienca, siç po shihet edhe deri në vitin 2050 me një optimizëm mjaft të madh dhe vendet të BE-s dhe domethënë gjithë bota është orientuar të jemë në drejt një procesi të fair tranzicion të energjisë, që do të kemë domethënë zero emitime të gazrave serë, kështu që po besoj prap do të flasim për një strategji të re të energjisë, e cila sipas legjislacionit duhet të rishikohet çdo 3 vite. Mendoj që edhe veturat elektrike do të jenë trendi pas 5 viteve. Do ta kem ndoshta si temë diskutimi, do të jenë në tregun e Kosovës.
Thank you. And the last words go to Stefan.
Well, I'm still thinking what to answer in this question. I would prefer not to meet you in 5 years. I prefer to solve all the problems and see Kosovo as a climate neutral country with happy people. Is it doable? In 5 years, yes, why not? Everything is doable. People can destroy the planet in 1 year. So why, at least we try for something good. At least we try. So I will be very happy if I meet you after 5 years, because this means that there is a reason to come back here. So I have done something. I have supported your strategy and your better life here in Kosovo. So maybe we won't need a new strategy after 5 years again, and we won't discuss about strategies. Maybe we will be somewhere in a house, in a building, which is a very good building, a very positive energy building, which is the new challenge. And maybe then after 6 years, and not after 5, I will meet you on a sunny island in Greece, and this is better.
Or in Germany.
Sunny islands in Germany, I don't think so.
With the climate change, maybe.
With climate change, maybe, yes.
Okay, so I would like to thank you all for this afternoon session. And we have learned there are no easy solutions, but perhaps there are smart solutions. And also sometimes a crisis can help to rethink. Certainly that is the case when we're talking about Ukraine. I personally think it might speed up our shift to the green agenda enormously. And this is, I'm looking here at my own country, Germany. I think we have to. There is no other way. So suddenly it's the only option. Before it was one of the options. So fingers crossed, and it was a pleasure. I hope I will meet you in 5 years, but hopefully not in this capacity. And I wish you all the best. And yeah, so see you tomorrow for the next day of the Kosovo Sustainable Development Week.
So
Thank
before you
Yes,
leave, sorry to
you are
interrupt.
behind me. Oh, I didn't see you. Sorry.
Okej, faleminderit shumë të gjithë panelistëve për këtë debat dhe diskutim kaq të frytshëm. Në emër të organizatorëve, unë falenderoj gjithë secilin prej jush që keni kontribuar sot në diskutimet tona, aq më tepër edhe audiencën që kanë qenë mjaft aktive në diskutimet tona. Ne nesër vazhdojmë me tema që prekin klimën, mjedisin, do të kemi edhe përfaqësues të nivelit lokal, andaj ju ftojmë të kyqeni edhe në diskutimet e ditës së nesërme. Për çdo informacion në lidhje me programin, ne ju ftojmë të shikoni faqen tonë në Facebook, Twitter dhe LinkedIn. Aty mund të shihni programin edhe për 2 ditët e ardhshme të konferencës, por gjithashtu edhe aktivitetet anësore që do të mbahen prej datës 3 deri më 10 qershor. Ju faleminderit shumë për vëmendjen dhe mirëmbëjtje.